The Velthari Observation Council had catalogued 412 sentient species across the known star systems. 412, each one recorded, assessed, ranked, and filed away in the Grand Archive like exotic insects pinned beneath glass. The Council prided itself on this. They considered it the highest form of civilization, watching others from a comfortable distance, never interfering, never engaging, simply observing and writing very long, very boring reports about what they saw. Counselor Draven 9 had written many of those reports. He sat now in the observation chamber aboard the survey vessel Unblinking Eye, a ship shaped like a flattened oval and painted the deep amber of dried rust which, as his junior colleague Pellet had once pointed out, made it look less like a scientific vessel and more like a discarded seed pod. Draven 9 had not appreciated that observation. He was 600 years old. He had catalogued 37 species personally, and he did not enjoy being compared to a seed pod. Pellet, he said, without looking up from his records, what is the current atmospheric reading on the third planet? Pellet, who was young by Velthari standards, meaning he had only seen 240 years of existence, tapped his 8-fingered hand against the console. His skin was the pale blue of morning sky on their home world, faintly translucent near the temples, which meant he was nervous. Draven 9 noticed this. Nitrogen-oxygen dominant, Pellet said carefully. Carbon dioxide at negligible concentrations. The planet maintains a magnetic field sufficient to shield biological life from solar radiation. Surface gravity is within acceptable parameters. Water covers approximately 71% of the surface. And the dominant species? Draven 9 asked. There was a pause that lasted exactly 4 seconds longer than it should have. Draven 9 finally looked up. Pellet's temples had gone nearly fully translucent. The dominant species, Pellet said slowly, choosing each word with the care of someone diffusing an explosive, calls itself human. Biologically? Bilateral symmetry, endothermic, remarkably fragile skeletal structure. No natural armor, no venom glands, no echolocation, no regenerative capacity beyond basic cellular repair. Claws that are. Pellet paused again, largely ornamental. Draven 9 blinked his 3 eyes in sequence, which was the Velthari equivalent of raising an eyebrow. Ornamental. They file them sometimes, for aesthetics. They file down their own claws. Yes. Draven 9 leaned back in his chair, which creaked in a deeply satisfying way. Then this should be a simple catalogue. A social mammalian species, bipedal, vulnerable, probably territorial on a small scale, likely organized into tribes or family groups. We observe, we document, we file, we leave. What is their current technological tier? Pellet pulled up the assessment on his secondary screen. He stared at it for a moment. Then he stared at it for another moment. Pellet. They have left their atmosphere, Pellet said. Naturally. Most Tier 4 civilizations develop rudimentary space travel before they have left their solar system. The chair stopped creaking. Draven 9 sat very still. Outside the observation chamber, stars drifted past the viewport with the slow patience of things that have existed for billions of years and find no need to rush. The unblinking eye hummed quietly to itself. That, Draven 9 said at last, is not possible for a species of that biological profile, and yet, Pellet said. Draven 9 stood up and walked to the primary console himself. He looked at the data. He read through it twice. Then he pulled up the historical record on the species, starting from earliest observation, which the Council's automated drone network had quietly maintained for approximately 300 of the planet's years. What he found there did not make him feel better. The humans, according to the earliest records, had spent a significant portion of their recent history in a state of near-constant warfare with each other. Not small territorial disputes, not ritualized combat for mating rights, as many species practiced. Actual, large-scale, technologically accelerating warfare that had, at one point, threatened to end their civilization entirely. They almost destroyed themselves, Draven 9 said. 3 times, Pellet confirmed, that we recorded. They may have had earlier events that predate our observation window, and instead of destroying themselves, they developed faster. Each conflict accelerated their technological progression by an estimated factor of 3 to 8, depending on the specific event analyzed. Draven 9 pressed his fingertips together. On his home world, this gesture had no meaning. He had picked up the habit from watching human footage in the archive, and he was not entirely sure when it had started. Show me their weapons development timeline, he said quietly. Pellet pulled it up without a word because he had already looked at it, and he had already felt the particular cold sensation that was now settling into Draven 9's chest like swallowed ice. The humans had started with edged stone tools. Within what the Council's scale would classify as a geological eye blink, they had developed projectile weapons, then explosive propelled projectiles, then aerial bombardment, then atomic fission weapons, then fusion weapons, then orbital platforms, then quietly and without any fanfare that the observation drones had picked up, directed energy weapons mounted on vessels that were by any reasonable measurement warships, not exploration vessels with a defensive armament, which most spacefaring species developed. Warships, purpose-built, multiple classes, clearly the product of sustained institutional investment. Who are they fighting? Driven 9 asked. Currently, Pelat said, each other. Still, although at greatly reduced intensity compared to their historical peak conflict periods, they have also colonized 2 additional planetary bodies in their home system and established listening posts at the outer boundary. Listening posts, scanning for signals, broadly spectrum. They have been transmitting signals outward for approximately 120 of their years, and scanning for responses. Draven 9 felt, for the first time in several centuries of professional observation work, something adjacent to alarm. They are looking for other species, enthusiastically Pelat confirmed. The observation chamber felt somewhat smaller than it had 10 minutes ago. Draven 9 walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond the visible curve of space, that small blue-green planet spun on its axis at a frankly unreasonable speed for something that produced creatures with no natural armor and ornamental claws. What is the Council's current classification for this species? He asked. Pelat checked. Pre-contact. Tier 4 emerging. Threat assessment. Negligible. Recommended action. Continued passive observation, no contact protocol. Negligible. Draven 9 repeated. That assessment was filed 260 years ago, Pelat said, somewhat apologetically. Pull up the full biological threat assessment, not the summary, the full document. It took Pelat a moment to find it in the archive. When he did, they both read it in silence. It was, objectively speaking, a document full of confident incorrectness. The analyst who had written it had focused heavily on the human's lack of natural defensive adaptations. No shell, no toxins, soft tissue, relatively poor night vision compared to many predatory species, slow reproductive cycle, long dependency period for offspring. The analyst had concluded that the humans were essentially prey animals who had gotten lucky with brain development. What the analyst had apparently not considered, or had considered and dismissed, was the section of the biological report that mentioned the human immune system's adaptability, or the section that mentioned their pain tolerance relative to their body mass, or the section that mentioned their pursuit-predation capabilities, or the very small footnote, buried near the end of the document, that noted humans were one of the only species in the observed galaxy that ran toward loud, startling noises rather than away from them. Draven 9 said slowly, yes, we have been classifying them as prey. The Council has. Yes. Based on the absence of natural weapons. Correct. Draven 9 turned from the viewport. Do you know what the Yavari classification system calls a species that has no natural weapons, no natural armor, and no natural toxins, but that has nonetheless placed itself at the top of its planet's food chain and begun expanding beyond its atmosphere? Pelat had read the Yavari system. He had read it recently, in fact, since finding this assignment in his queue. The Yavari were one of the oldest surviving civilizations in the catalogued archive, and they had developed their threat classification system after a rather unfortunate incident with a species they had initially assessed as non-threatening. The Yavari classification system was notably more cautious than the Council's standard framework. The Yavari call that, Pelat said carefully, an apex generalist. And what is the Yavari recommended protocol for first contact with an apex generalist species? There was a long pause. Don't, Pelat said. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their patient drift. The unblinking eye hummed, and somewhere, in the direction of a small yellow star, 4 warships of a species the Council had classified as negligible slipped past the outer boundary of their home system and began moving outward. Their drives were not particularly fast by galactic standards. They would not win any races against the established civilizations, but they were running. They were always running. And the thing about humans, the thing that the 260-year-old threat assessment had so thoroughly missed, was that they had evolved on a world where some of their ancestors had hunted prey by simply following it, for days, without stopping, without rest, until whatever they were chasing finally collapsed from exhaustion while the human, sweating and upright and absolutely furious, walked calmly up to finish the job. They did not need to be fast. They only needed to be relentless. Draven 9, Pelat said suddenly. What? One of their vessels has changed course. Draven 9 walked back to the console. It is now heading, Pelat said, his temples fully translucent, the blue of his skin several shades lighter than it had been when the shift started. In our direction. They cannot have detected us, Draven 9 said. Our cloaking field is a Tier 7 standard installation. They are a Tier 4 emerging civilization. They cannot possibly. The communication console lit up. It lit up on a frequency the unblinking eye used only for internal ship communications, a frequency that was not broadcast, a frequency that by any reasonable technological assessment, a Tier 4 civilization should not have known existed. A voice came through the speaker. It was a human voice. It spoke in a language neither Draven 9 nor Pellet had ever learned, because they had never needed to, because the Council had said the humans were negligible, but the translation system on board the vessel designed to handle 412 cataloged languages was already working on it, and after 3 seconds it produced a rendering. The voice said, "Hey, we know you're out there. We've known for about 40 years. We figured you'd show up eventually. You want to talk, or are we doing this the other way?" Draven 9 stared at the speaker. Kale stared at the speaker. The human vessel continued its approach at a pace that was, for a ship of its size, genuinely quite quick. "The other way?" Draven 9 said quietly, mostly to himself. "What does that mean?" From somewhere deep in the archive, from hundreds of hours of collected human audio and visual transmissions, his own translation system helpfully supplied a reference, a human phrase, very old, possibly ancient, by their calendar. "I come in peace," the system noted, is the traditional opening for non-hostile contact. The subject did not use this phrase. No, the subject had not. The unblinking eye had a protocol for unexpected contact situations. Draven 9 had written part of it himself, back when he was younger and more enthusiastic about writing protocols. It was a thorough document, covering 47 distinct scenarios involving first contact with pre-cataloged species. It had subsections. It had appendices. It had a very detailed flowchart on page 31 that walked the reader through each possible situation with calm, methodical precision. Not one single branch of that flowchart ended with the words, "The species already knows you are here and is asking if you want to do this the hard way." "Pellet," Draven 9 said. "I am already reading the protocol document," Pellet said. "Is there anything useful in it?" A pause. Pages turned. Metaphorically speaking. "Page 31 has a flowchart," Pale offered. "Forget the flowchart." Draven 9 stared at the communication console as if staring at it hard enough would somehow unlight it. The human vessel continued its approach. It was not accelerating aggressively. It was not powering weapons as far as the unblinking eye's sensors could determine. It was simply moving toward them steadily, at a pace that felt almost conversational. "Come here, let us talk." Or alternatively, "Come here, let us not talk." The message had not specified which that was. Draven 9 was beginning to understand, very much on purpose. "Open a return channel," he said. Kale looked at him. "They already know we are here," Draven 9 said. "Maintaining silence at this point accomplishes nothing except making us appear frightened." "Are we not frightened?" Palat asked. "We are scientists," Draven 9 said, with considerably more dignity than he currently felt entitled to. "We are never frightened. We are cautiously alert." He opened the channel himself. There was a brief silence on the human end, lasting perhaps 2 seconds. Then the voice returned. It was the same voice as before, calm, unhurried, carrying in its tone the particular quality of someone who has been waiting a long time for a thing, and is now very settled in the knowledge that the wait is over. "Good," the voice said. "Talking it is. My name is Commander Yara Osei. You are listening to the survey vessel Meridian out of the Terran Exploratory Command. And you are." Draven 9 collected himself. 600 years of professional observation, 37 catalog species. He had once maintained composure during an observation of a species that communicated exclusively through controlled bioluminescent vomiting. He could manage this. "I am Counselor Draven 9 of the Velthari Observation Council," he said, through the translator. "Aboard the survey vessel Unblinking Eye. We are a scientific body. We mean no hostility." Another brief pause. "Great," Commander Osei said. "Neither do we. Mostly. Draven 9 let that word sit in the air of the observation chamber for a moment. "Commander Osei," he said carefully. "How long have you been aware of our presence in this system? Our observation of your vessel specifically?" A slight sound came through the channel. It took the translation system 3 full seconds to identify it as a human laugh, the short kind, the kind that is not entirely amused, and is doing at least 3 other emotional jobs simultaneously. About 6 weeks. Our awareness that someone was watching us? Longer. How much longer? Draven 9 asked before he could stop himself. My grandfather's generation noticed the pattern anomalies in deep-range stellar telemetry, she said. Observation drones have a particular gravitational footprint when they hold a fixed position relative to a moving body. Yours are good. They are very good. But we had about 40 years to look for them, and humans are very patient when we want something badly enough. Draven 9 thought about the pursuit predation footnote in the biological assessment. He thought about it at considerable length. You said 40 years, he said, give or take. You have known for 40 years that you were being observed by an extraterrestrial intelligence, and you did not. Draven 9 searched for the right phrasing, to alter your behavior. There was a pause that felt different from the previous pauses, warmer, somehow, more amused. Oh, we altered our behavior, Commander Osei said. We accelerated our space program by about 30 years. We improved our long-range scanning arrays. We developed the frequency detection suite that found your internal comm band, which took us about 11 years and 4 failed prototypes, and we built the Meridian and her sisters, which are sitting outside your cloaking field right now and have been for the past 3 days. Sisters. Draven 9 looked at Pellet. Pellet was already running an expanded sensor sweep. His expression, already pale with alarm, managed to find new depths. He held up 4 fingers. 4 vessels. The unblinking eye had detected one. There were 4. You cloaked your vessels, Draven 9 said. His voice was admirably steady, he thought, given the circumstances. We learned from the best, Commander Osei said, and there was something in her voice then that Draven 9 could not quite categorize. Not quite pride, not quite humor, something that lived between the two and was sharper than either. You have been watching us for 300 years. We figured cloaking technology was probably on the table for anyone sophisticated enough to manage that without making direct contact, so we worked on it. It took us a while. We are, by your standards, I suspect, very new at this. And yet, Draven 9 said, which was what Pellet had said to him less than an hour ago, and the irony of that was not lost on him. And yet, she agreed pleasantly, there was a silence. The unblinking eye hummed. 4 human warships sat outside its cloaking field, uncloaked now, visible on the expanded sensor sweep, arranged in a loose formation that was, Draven 9 noted with a sensation like cold water poured slowly down his spine, not defensive. It was the arrangement of vessels that had no reason to be defensive. The arrangement of things that are waiting, not hiding. Counselor, Commander Osei said, I want to be very straightforward with you because I think straightforward is going to save us both a lot of time. We are not here to threaten you. We are not here to claim territory or make demands. We are explorers. That is genuinely what we are. Whatever else we might also be. Whatever else, Draven 9 said. We are aware that we have a reputation, she said. Even among ourselves. We are aware that our history is not the history of a gentle species. We fought each other for a very long time, and some of us are still working through the implications of that. But we are out here now, and we are talking to you, and I would very much like this to be the beginning of something better than what came before it. Draven 9 sat down in his chair. It creaked. He found that comforting. You said you want something, he said. 40 years of watching, 11 years developing frequency detection, 4 warships outside my cloaking field. You want something specific, Commander? Yes, she said simply. What? We want to know who else is out there, she said. We want to know the shape of this thing, the galaxy, the civilizations. We have been alone with only ourselves for our entire history, and we have been difficult company. We would like to meet the neighbors, properly, with full knowledge on both sides. Draven 9 thought about the Grand Archive. 412 species, centuries of observation, contact protocols and threat assessments and flowcharts with 47 scenarios, none of which had accounted for this. The Council, he said slowly, does not typically make direct contact with emerging species. I know, Commander Osei said. We found your observation drone's data burst transmissions about 30 years in. It took us another 6 years to crack the encryption, but we have a fairly complete picture of your Council's standard operating procedure at this point. The silence that followed that statement was the loudest silence Draven 9 had experienced in 6 centuries of life. They had cracked the encryption. The Velthari Observation Council used a Tier 7 encryption standard across all its data transmissions. It was the same standard used by 4 of the most technologically advanced civilizations in the catalogued archive. It had never been cracked. It had been considered by the Council's own technical division essentially uncrackable by anything below a Tier 6 civilization. The humans were classified Tier 4. Were. Past tense apparently. Commander Osei. Draven 9 said. Yes, Counselor. When your council classified your species as a threat level, he said, and he heard his own voice doing something strange, something that might have been the Velthari equivalent of a very reluctant laugh. They classified you as negligible, did they? She said, and her voice was warm. Genuinely warm. Well, we have always been good at being underestimated. It is almost a cultural tradition at this point. Pellet made a small sound from across the console. Draven 9 looked at him. Pellet was staring at the secondary display, where the expanded biological record on humans had been running continuously since they started the channel. He was staring at a specific section. Draven 9 recognized it as the subsection on human psychological responses to adversity. The subsection noted, among other things, that humans had a documented tendency to respond to overwhelming odds not with retreat or surrender, but with a behavioral pattern the researchers had labeled motivated problem solving. They became under pressure more creative, not less. The worse the situation, the more unusual and effective their solutions tended to become. It also noted, in a line that had been included purely as a biological curiosity and had apparently been read by no one in the council with any particular urgency, that humans were one of the only species in the observed record that had developed the concept of doing something specifically because they were told it could not be done. Commander Osei, Draven 9 said, I am going to be honest with you because I believe, as you said, that honesty will save us both considerable time. Please, she said. The council is not going to be pleased about this contact. The protocol has been violated in multiple directions simultaneously, and some of those violations are mine. There will be reviews. There will be hearings. There will be a very large number of very long reports written by people who were not here. That sounds exhausting, she said. It will be, he agreed. However, I am 600 years old. I have cataloged 37 species. I have read more threat assessments than I can count, and I have written several of them, and I am telling you now, Commander, that every single one of them would have gotten your species catastrophically wrong. Whatever the Council decides about protocol, I personally would very much like to not be on the wrong side of a catastrophic error when your people find the rest of the civilizations in this archive. A pause, shorter than the others. Are you offering to help us? She asked. I am offering, Draven 9 said carefully, to make an introduction. I am offering to be the voice that says, to 412 catalog species, that the humans are coming, and that they are coming whether we are ready or not, and that the considerably more intelligent choice is to be the ones who chose to be ready. Outside the viewport the stars drifted. 4 human warships sat in formation, patient and still, waiting for his answer. On the planet somewhere behind them, billions of soft-bodied, unarmored, ornamental clawed creatures were going about their daily lives, watching their skies, pointing their antennas outward, running toward loud sounds, and filing down their own claws for reasons of personal aesthetics. Apex generalists. The Yavari called them. The recommendation had been, don't. But the Yavari, Draven 9 reflected, had said that after it was already too late, he was being given a rare thing. A moment before the too late. A moment where the shape of the next 1,000 years might still bend slightly depending on what was said in the next 60 seconds. Commander Yara Osei spoke first. Counselor Draven 9, she said, and there was something in her voice now that was none of the things it had been before. Not the controlled calm of the opener. Not the sharp amusement of the middle. Something quieter. Something that sounded through the translation system, very much like hope. We have been alone for a very long time. We do not want to be predators out here. We have enough of that history already. We want to be something better. We just need someone to tell us where to start. 600 years of observation, 37 species, 47 scenarios on a flowchart that had never once imagined this moment. Draven 9 looked at Pellet. Pellet's skin had returned to its normal blue. He gave a slow single nod. Start, Draven 9 said into the open channel. By following us, there is someone you should meet. Several hundred someones, in fact. And I would recommend, for the sake of everyone involved, that you lead with the talking. A beat of silence. Then, and if talking doesn't work? Commander Osei asked. Draven 9 almost smiled. He was not entirely sure his face did it correctly. He had not had much practice. Then, he said, I suspect you will figure something out. The 4 human warships fell into formation behind the unblinking eye as it turned toward the deep dark between stars. Ahead the Grand Archive waited. 412 species catalogued and filed and entirely unprepared for what was about to walk through the door. They were not prey. They had never been prey. They were something the galaxy had not yet found a word for. It was about to start learning one.